reggae, ooh, yeah. Rock and roll jukebox.
Well, it's one for the money, two for the show, three to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue shoe.
And country go. All new shows on Spectrum on Air. Visit our website on spectrumonair.com or listen on Mixcloud Live.
Don't forget, you can listen to this radio station on the Get Me Radio platform. Download the Get Me Radio app and listen on your Android or Apple mobile phone, and a whole range of TV apps such as Roku, Fire, Android and Apple TV. You can also listen on Alexa and Google Home devices. Just search for Get Me Radio. Download the apps and listen to this radio station on your favorite devices.
Why not come with me, Tony Ingledown, on a journey in my time tunnel? Broadcast every Monday between 2 and 3 p.m. on Spectrum on Air. I'll be taking a trip down memory lane, playing music from the late 60s through to the 80s. Indulge yourself in some nostalgia and let us go back in time together. That's Tony's Time Tunnel every Monday between 2 and 3 p.m. on Spectrum on Air, the colourful voice of radio. I hope that's a date. Don't be late.
New smart apps with our advanced ways for viewing. XP TV One. You can now view us on Samsung Galaxy Store, Apple App Store, Google Play, Roku, Samsung Smart TV's App Store, and Apple TV, Huawei, Amazon Fire Stick, and App Store. XP TV One. Tomorrow's TV broadcasting today.
You are listening to Spectrum on Air. The colourful voice of radio.
Welcome to Extra Time with Rosemarie. And I have a special show tonight because I don't have just one person, I have two people. And it's like looking at two sides of a coin. What's happening is I have April O'Leary, who is a publisher, and John Allen, who has written a book that's been published by April. So, my breath is taken away because I am just so thrilled to have both of them on air. What I'm going to do is start ladies first. April, you have your own publishing company. So how did you get started in this?
Well, thanks for having us on the show. We're very excited to be here. How I got started in publishing was honestly by starting writing as a life coach back in 2012 and having my own first manuscript and having no idea what to do with it. And going and reaching out to a traditional publisher, going to their writer's workshop and really learning about the power of building your own platform as an author in order to become a traditionally published author. And I wasn't at that point yet in my life coaching brand building. And so I figured out how to self-publish because I didn't know there were alternatives. So a few years down the road, I had some friends asking me how I was doing it, and I helped them. And that sort of was the birth of O'Leary Publishing. Was just by helping some friends publish and realizing I loved it. I had the skills to do it, and I enjoy helping people tell their stories and share with the world.
Now, the interesting part about your publishing company is you specialize in books that are nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we do.
Why?
Well,
why pick that genre?
Yeah, well, why? Why? It's a good question because I do get a lot of inquiries about fiction books. And of course, fiction books are a great genre. It's just not our genre because what we really enjoy doing and what we're really good at doing is helping people tell their stories. And a lot of times the stories that are told have to do with the person's brand and what they're doing in the world professionally. Sort of like what happened with me in 2012 when I was life coaching and I started sharing the messages at that time of self-care and the importance of that kind of thing for women. the book became the central core piece of my brand, where I built some courses off of it and I launched some conferences off of it. And so for me as a book publisher, working with people on their nonfiction stories, a lot of times, like John will share later, it is birthed from your expertise. It's birthed from decades of experience or from life tragedies or successes you've had. And I think it's really valuable to share those stories and pay it forward in a way that can help other people. And that for us is the total win, to be able to help people do that.
We're going to talk a little bit more about your publishing company, but now we're going to switch to the other side of the screen. John, you have written a book, obviously, which is why you're on here, because you are a published author now. What is your book about, and why did you decide to go with April's company?
Thank you. My book is called Simple Strategies, and I had a choice to make when I decided to write the book. I could make it a strictly technical book, or as April just alluded to, I could make it a story. And a story is far more interesting than just a technical book. I wanted to tell the story of the people that I interfaced with, and that's not a good word, the people that I worked with and touched and who touched me over the course of many years. Then I could make it a successful book. But how did I get in contact with April? I went into Barnes & Noble one day, and there was a woman in there named Jennifer Johnson. And Jennifer is an interesting woman as well in her own right, as well as one of April's published authors, one of her many published authors. And I asked her who published her book, and she gave me April's contact information. I think it was the following Monday I contacted April, told her I had a finished manuscript, which is hilarious, because there's no such thing. I thought an editor just, checked your spelling and a couple of things like that. Well, I was in for a rude awakening. And we had a long way to go in the book. And it was an extraordinary experience working with April and her company and the people in her company. And without the help of a publisher such as April and her company, my book wouldn't be what it is today. But it is a story about the work that I've done around the world, helping companies solve complicated technical problems. But as I said earlier, I wanted to make it about the people that I worked with in sometimes difficult environments, like a foundry in India, a machine shop in China or Mexico, a smelter in Sweden or Norway, rather. We've worked all over the world, and as a result, I have a story to tell. And the story is not just about the projects, but it's about the people from around the world.
Now, John, you're talking about your business around the world. Are you an engineer? What is your field?
My field is engineering. My business partner actually lives outside of London, one of them, and another one lives outside of Munich. We've been working together for 30 years. We had a company called The New Science of Fixing Things and merged our company about 2 years ago with a larger company called Crossover Solutions out of, they're an international consulting company. And as a result of that, I got the support to publish Simple Strategies. And so we're an international consulting company and working around the world. The phone rings, people have a problem that they can't figure out, and they call us. Maybe they've been working on it for a year, 2 or 10. And we typically figure it out in a week or two.
Okay, John, I'm going to ask you one more question, then I'm going to switch back over to April. What made you pick this time, this specific time, to write your book? What's that? I think I'm going to write a book today. Did you wake up in the middle of the night, or did you have an extra glass of wine? What made you decide that you were going to write this book?
I've been thinking about writing this book for many years. And I have 2 blogs. One of them is a personal blog, and the other one is a business blog. And I was telling stories there. some of them quite technical, some of them about the people that I worked with. And I knew there was a book in there, but it had to be a different kind. So I certainly didn't wake up and decide to do it. I spent quite a bit of time thinking about it. And everything just sort of fell together. My original manuscript is nothing like the book that's published. And that in itself is a story of how I worked with April and Heather to get the story to the point where it was worthy of publishing. And it's quite fascinating because I intended to write a technical story, not a technical book, but a technical story. But April's company was able to help me shape it in such a way that anybody can understand the book. And that was probably the most challenging and the most important thing to me. Without their help, I might have sold 100 copies of this book. And because it wouldn't have been interesting, because there wouldn't have been a story.
And that's the interesting thing about writing stories. During COVID, when everybody was in lockdown, all of a sudden everybody decided that they were Charles Dickens and started writing books and things like this. And when you get done writing a book, I don't know if people think that little elves come in the middle of the night and publish it in marketing. Writing a book is, when you get put the end in it, whether it's not, it's only the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, April, I know you receive 99.9% of your clients coming in saying, this is ready to be published. And how do you disillusion them and still keep them as clients?
Well, disillusion them is a great word. I don't use that and tell them they're living in an illusion. Thankfully, I've got better sales skills than that. But I like to say it's a great first draft. Even to get a first draft done is an accomplishment. Most people will live their lives with this. I should write a book, or someone told me I should write a book, and they'll never put any words to paper or try to organize their thoughts. So just to get to the point of that is great. And in anything, we can do our best effort on our own, but then you need a team to sort of help you shape and mold and grow it to the publishable piece that it will become, as John experienced. So for me, it's understanding that there can't be a final draft before there's a first draft. And that's totally doable and acceptable. Nobody publishes their first draft. And then to your point about the publishing fairy coming in the middle of the night, I've sort of learned to boil down the idea of book sales into product. Like John works with products and people who manufacture products, right? So a book is just a product that you have created. Now, how is that product going to go out into distribution? So that person, that author who creates this product, yes, the ideas can be great. Yes, the design of it can be great. But the only person who can really help you get that into distribution is you, because only you have the contacts you have, only you have the experience and the background you have, only you can speak to your book in the way that's meaningful. The publisher, like for us, we have a lot of people we work with. There's no way I can represent each message to the degree that each author can represent their own message. And so it's taking off that creative hat and putting on that sales and marketing hat and figuring out, where are my readers? How am I going to reach them? And knowing it's your responsibility to do that as an author, that there is no magic wand that any publisher has that they can wave and create and manufacture your reader base.
Unfortunately, in the publishing world, as I'm getting more involved with it, as a writer, not as anything near publishing, there's so many scams that go out. And you send in a book that you think, or a document that you think is going to be good, and you get this letter back saying, I can help you, but for $6,000, I can make you a world-class writer like J.K. Rowling, which is such a scam, because it takes a lot into it. Also, so you brought up something which is touched on a little bit that's a big in the writing world right now, AI. Because you're right. I don't think AI is going to be the end-all and be-all. It can't be, because you need that creative thoughts that comes from people like John and your other writers.
Yeah.
Finding out that you have different writers, and I'm going back to John again. I don't know which way it's showing on people's screens, but I'm going back to John again. John, when you started writing your book, to do your first draft, how long did it take you to write? That's a lot of people ask me, how long does it take you to write? And because you are a businessman and you do work, so it's not like you have nothing to do except for sit down with a pen and paper.
Okay. I started off with an outline on the whiteboard, and I wonder if it's still there. No, it's gone. I erased it with something else. But it's probably around here on a flip chart someplace. And it just took me one sheet of paper to put an outline together. And then I just began to write pieces around each one. I mean, I had a series of chapters laid out and what I wanted to say, and I began to write each one. But, I told myself while I was doing this, and I've written many articles, and I can write an article in a week. But going from an article to a book is completely different because you got to be able to weave the whole thing together and carry a certain message throughout 200 pages instead of 5 or 10. And what I continued to tell myself was, you cannot write a book. No one can write a book. You can't even write a chapter. You can write a paragraph and you can write a sentence, and then you carry that forward. And that was what I tried to keep in mind when I didn't feel like writing. Sit down and write a sentence, write a paragraph, get a single thought down, and then develop it. So the book was like writing a series, became a series of articles that I wrote, but I managed to weave it all together, not without help. So the first draft, I suppose it took 4 months, but my definition of a first draft was to go from an outline on a whiteboard to a completed book. And I thought I had pretty much a finished book. And then I was severely disabused of that thought process the first time I met with April and Heather.
Which brings me back to the original question I had. When an author goes and actually talks to a publisher and you receive their baby, you realize it's not quite what we want to do. But you've got the experience. That's the good part about it. And you know what the market is, and that's another thing. Writing books are great, and I really enjoy it in my later life now that I'm getting older than dirt. My new career is writing. I love writing the magic of words. Businesswoman, I am not, which is why we have somebody capable like you, April, that does this. You learned a lot of... Now, how big is your team that you have, that you work with?
So our editorial team is comprised of Heather, who's the first stop on the block, Heather DeRocher. She does all the developmental work. So what John was saying is when his manuscript came in as a first draft, she reads through the whole thing and then meets with the author and says, this is not ready to publish. She doesn't say that directly, but here are the things, the strengths, the weaknesses, what I suggest, how we're going to move things around. How did you feel about that process, John, when you first met with Heather and you didn't know her yet and she read your book and told you what she wanted to do with it? Do you remember that?
Sure, I do. My first reaction was, this woman is brilliant. And I trusted her immediately. My second reaction was everything she said was right, and I didn't want to hear it. And I knew I had a lot more work to do. I had envisioned after, with an editor, maybe I'd spend a month or something like that. But I had 8 months more work to do. There was a lot more work to do. But I knew I had to do it because I knew the things that she said would make the book what it is, which is an extraordinary book. So I think after our first meeting, I didn't touch it for 2 weeks. I went and did something else. And then I began to reshape it. She said, and one of the things that she said was, you wrote this book as if it were a novel. You got to get all the way to the end of the book to figure out what it's about. But what the intention of this book is to make it a technical book, and you have to reveal the entire story in the first 10 or 15 pages. And I said, oh, gosh, of course. And it's not a burlesque show. Get to the point right away. And So that's what we did. And the entire book is told in the preface or the introduction. I forget which piece. So I tell the story in the introduction, and then chapters 1 through 10 is the process of developing that story and building on what's revealed in the introduction. And it made it easier to write the thing once I got the point. And it made it easier to write it. It made it easier for people to follow along. I mean, I've got just extraordinary reviews that are posted on Amazon. I mean, some of these, April, you've seen, and they're just extraordinary reviews, and it really touched my heart. Maybe I should get to the part about touching my heart as well. What do you think, April?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick little break here.
Okay.
So we can catch our breath, have a cup of tea if appropriate, and also, two, we're going to listen to a song, which I picked deliberately from today.
Okay.
It's by a group called Panic at the Disco, and the song is called High Hopes, and it talks about you can be 1 in a million. And when you're writing your book, you hope you are going to be that 1 in a million. And enjoy it. I don't know if you guys have ever heard it before, but it's definitely one of my favorite songs because it is so eloquent. Talk in a couple of minutes. And I'm going to be turning off the video or our screens so we can talk behind the scenes.
Sundays at 9 p.m. with DJ RPM. 60 minutes energy of techno music in one mix from DJ RPM. It's time for Techno Energy Maker.
why don't you join me, Joe Caldwell, on the Real Room Radio Show, Fridays at 8 p.m, here on Spectrum On Air. I play fantastic news releases from a wealth of undiscovered talent, and I'll even be interviewing one or two of them to learn more about them and what makes them tick. So join me, Joe, on the Real Room Radio Show, 8 p.m. Fridays, here on Spectrum On Air, the colourful voice of radio.
Well, we're coming back to, after that fantastic song that says, a 1 in a million, because doesn't most authors want to make that 1 in a million? But very few people make that much money off of their books. Isn't it the marketing? I mean, ask some of these people, and I use the word J.K. Rowling. The difference between J.K. Rowling's royalties and my royalties, she was able to buy a yacht with her royalties, and I can buy a latte with mine. So, but it's all marketing. So if they ever make my book into a movie, then we'll talk again.
Not a good sales pitch.
So just before we had the song and we talked about it, John, you were just bringing up the fact that what happened to your heart? April didn't take it from you, did she?
Oh, geez, I don't want to answer that question. Well, her whole company has my heart.
Okay, all right.
Okay, well, when April first started talking about nonfiction books, she started by saying that everyone has a story, and that's the lead into the 10-minute talk I'm giving this Thursday with Book Naples, that's sponsored by April here, sponsored by April.
And excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you guys once. We're talking about April in Florida, not Naples in Italy, correct?
Exactly.
You guys are coming to me from Florida.
Oh, right.
In Naples, Italy, maybe next year, John.
Yeah.
Well, we could be.
I woke them up early just so they can be on this show here, but just to give you a locale here. Okay.
Yeah, well, everyone has a story. And you know, when you started talking about what made you decide to write a book, I said that what I wanted to do was to weave my story into a technical story and be able to tell it from my heart. And the reason I wanted to tell it from my heart is because I have a new heart. It was almost 8 years ago when I was driving a car in Tampa, Florida, and I passed out and wrecked the car. I ended up in a hospital. And they said the reason you passed out is because you have a leaky heart valve. We'll go in and put in a new valve and you'll be on your way. Well, a year later, I got out of the hospital. I was given a drug I was allergic to. I was put into a coma. It destroyed my heart. And I was in the hospital for a year waiting for a heart transplant. And while I was waiting, one of the things that I did was write stories. I wrote a story about, well, actually, one of the stories was interesting. I wrote a story about one of the machines that was hooked up to me, and I knew it wasn't working right. And I wrote a story about that machine. I wrote a story about communicating with my mother and asking her to have a little chat with God and see if I could get a heart by Valentine's Day. Well, that didn't work. I had to wait for another 8 or 9 months. And I wrote stories about survival and being in the hospital for that long, not knowing if I were going to live. All I cared about was survive. My objective was to survive one more day and mentally prepare myself for what might happen, which is I might not get out of there. But I did, and I wove the story of my heart into simple strategies, but only from the standpoint of wanting people to understand how I see with fresh eyes. And I see the world in a completely different way, post-heart versus pre-heart. Without getting into too much detail, let's just say that I like the way I see the world now as opposed to prior, much more. And it gives me the ability to see with fresh eyes, to get other people to tell me their stories and appreciate their stories. And the fact of the matter is I just do it all over the world. And I work with people around the world. And they do have wonderful stories. And there's so much more to it than just fixing somebody's machines.
It's sounds like such a typical engineer that you realize one of the machines you're hooked up to doesn't work correctly. I was going to say, that could be your byline, really. But anyway, getting that little mental picture out of my mind.
Well, I knew that the internal impedance of the machine was higher than it should be, and I could tell by listening to it. Now everyone just clicked out of the radio show because they're not interested in that.
No, I think that would be one thing they click the radio show in for to see.
Okay.
So, Nate, you brought up something, John, that I'm going to turn over now to April. April, you have an event that's up and coming. You want to tell us about it?
I would love to, actually. So to your point earlier about us publishing nonfiction books, one of the things that was birthed through that was this idea for Booked Naples. I was about the second year into building the company, and so many of our authors have amazing stories. They want to do a professional speaking, maybe as an added income stream or to promote their brand or their business or travel more, whatever the reason. But it's hard to break into professional speaking, especially paid speaking, if you don't have a speaker reel. And if you don't know what a speaker reel is, it's really just a sample video of you on stage speaking in front of an audience. It can be a montage or something like that, but you need at least something where someone who would potentially put you on their stage can see you. But the catch-22 is, how do you get that if you don't already have that? And so I thought, well, let me just give that opportunity to my authors to take the stage in front of a few hundred people, really perfect a short talk that can become, it can be grown into a keynote talk. It can be a short talk that they give anywhere to any sort of local clubs or at conferences or on workshop panels or whatever. And we professionally video record it, and they get that video to use afterwards. So this really became something fun, and now we're in our fourth year doing it. And so this Book Naples event is happening this week on April 10th here in Naples, Florida. And we have 5 of our authors who will be taking the stage. It's very similar to if you've watched TED Talks. That's the goal, and that's what we modeled it after, was a short 10-minute talk, because we realized that in order for an event planner to watch a video of you, they're not going to watch an hour-long talk. They want a short sample. And I think the idea of boiling something down to really the brass tacks, just give me, touch my heart in 10 minutes. As John said, yes, it can be technical, but I want to feel something when I hear your talk. And so it's really an inspiring event where we bring the community together to showcase our authors and have them laughing and crying and getting signed copies of books from authors that are really exceptional.
Well, it's interesting. I've known John for a while, and John has introduced me to you, April. Now, the interesting thing I found out from April is she, like me, belongs to an organization called Toastmasters, which is another place where people can go to learn to become a little bit better speakers, which is critically important when you're trying to tell people about your books, your stories, and why they should read. And that's an interesting way of doing it, because I know, being part of Toastmasters, I would say 85% of the people that go to Toastmasters wants to earn a living, make money by talking on the stage. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I would say, for our authors, I say, sort of like you made the joke earlier that you can buy a latte with your royalties. For me, the book publishing process and the potential of income from a book is not the big picture. The big picture is, yes, can you have an income stream from getting paid speaking? Sure, that's great. But can more people be attracted to buying whatever it is you do as a consultant or a coach or some other type of profession, where the book becomes this know, like, and trust factor that opens the door to the way you serve them in a much bigger way? And so keeping that always in mind with Toastmasters as well is, you're obviously, if you're a terrible speaker, not going to have that opportunity. So really, to polish up your speaking skills in a safe and fun environment, I recommend Toastmasters for anybody. And it's international. We just had our dues were due for like the next 6 months, and they were literally $69.
Different costs, different countries. But yeah, I'm over here in England. We got the same thing.
Yeah. Where else can you go where you can have that? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also too, some clubs have it online, some of them have online and in person, whatever it has you. But going back to John, John, your book now, and maybe April can weigh in on this, has your book opened up any additional or potential business because it's been out there? Because you're trying to make your book more accessible for people that are not necessarily in your field or your previous clients. So is it opening up a new world for you? Have you heard of people that are reading your book that are not necessarily in your field?
That's an interesting question. It has generated a lot of interest, and it's only been how long ago was this published?
Honestly, only a little over a month.
Yeah, your book hasn't been out there, but I've been seeing a lot of positive things, and people who have been seeing, they pre-ordered it, and it's been going quite well for a first-time author.
It's been out there about a month, maybe 6 weeks, something along those lines. And the reviews are extraordinary, and they're in some of them are in the front of the book. There were pre-release copies that we sent out that didn't look like the completed book. And people were writing 3- and 4-page reviews of the book that were extraordinary, and they obviously had to be cut down. But I work in a field where, gee whiz. Where my partners, David Hartshorn from England and Tobias Mack from Germany, the three of us are at the top of the field. But even though you're at the top of the field, you have competition where people think they know the world as well as we do, and frankly, they don't. We know it better than anybody else. We know how to do what we do better than anybody else. And what the book does is solidify our presence at the top of the game, and I think that's a good way to put it. My objective was never to go out and buy a Ferrari and put it in the driveway from the book. The objective was to get the message out there and to tell the story. And, if I can buy 2 lattes, then I'll be happy. So.
Can I have the second one?
Well, of course. Yeah, of course. So that's the objective. And there's one more thing that's very important to put in there. This book is my legacy, and it's captured. The legacy is captured here. I mean, there's a little bit more work to do, but that was the objective. I could not leave this earth without getting that book written, and I'm in real debt to April and her company for capturing my legacy of the work that we've been doing over 30 years. And I think that was really the objective.
I have one last question, or not one last question, one additional question. Are you planning on writing a book about the time you were in the hospital, in your whole system?
Yes, I will. I'll write that book. And it actually, when I finish this one, I told myself, I'm never going to write another book. I had no idea how much work this was. And then I told somebody, and they said, you'll be writing another one. And I said, no, I'm not. Well, I'm going to write another book, and it'll be about my heart transplant.
Now, April, you talked about Heather, who is one person's on your team, and it's the initial person that John met up with. But I know it's not just 2 of you that are running your company.
No. Heather's been with me since the beginning. So she has worked on we've just done a little over 50 books so far, but we have Pat, Boris, and David, who are also amazing editors. Jennifer Duty, who does proofreading for us as well. Kristen Bradford is our operations manager. Jessica Angerstein does book design. We have an illustrator, Jonathan, who, if the book requires that sort of custom illustration on the inside for any reason, we use him. And, other support, technical support, website support, and those kinds of things. So, yeah, and what's great, and I know this is like a post-COVID thing, but it even was pre-COVID for us, is we're all remote. So we work through Zoom, we work through Google Drive and through emails, and it works beautifully. Honestly, we have a really tight team, and all of the editorial team is going to be here for our Book Naples event. They're flying in from Seattle, Michigan, Northwoods of Wisconsin, Chicago, and it's going to be a great time to have us all together in person when we're used to working virtually.
Well, that's interesting that you're mentioning that they're all coming together and that you're international. So if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, April, how can we get a hold of your company or yourself?
That's great. So yeah, they can go to o'learypublishing.com. And actually, Heather has written a book called Manuscript Magic. We offer that book for free on the site. If you just opt in, you get it, and it's 7 easy steps to writing a book. I don't think it's easy steps. I just misspoke on the subtitle.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's 7 steps to writing a book. And that's a great place to start because you'll get to see kind of the picture of how we do that developmental editing and what we're going to require of you to really sharpen your manuscript. So going to the site is probably the best way to start. And then you can always schedule a publishing consultation or an editorial consultation, which is on our services page.
Now, we're actually getting to talk about what you guys have been doing. April, you said you published a book? Have you, or you want to?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I have done a number of books already, yes. But the one that's behind me here, The Who Me an Author, is a book that we launched last August. And really it just details sort of the demystifying of becoming an author. I think the questions most people struggle with, because they're not maybe like John at the very, very top of their field, they struggle a little more with self-doubt, like, who am I to write a book? Why does my voice matter? Those kinds of things that are it shows that you have a little bit of, apprehension. But the truth is, your story is valuable because it's your lived experience. And so putting it in a book only validates your story from your angle and your perception of life. And it's a valuable thing to do. So it gives that sort of 10 reasons, it showcases 10 of our authors who wrote books for different various reasons to sort of help you get over that threshold of fear and doubt and to say, maybe my voice does matter. Maybe like John, the legacy of what I'm doing is so important that you got to put it out there.
I was going to ask you, John, I know how I felt when I held my first book in my hand and it came from the publishers. What was your feeling when you finally had your book in your hand, you saw the cover and its reality?
Frankly, it almost put me in tears because I had put so much work and effort into it. And it's a beautiful book. The cover is extraordinary. The artwork is beautiful. And I met the objective of what I had set out to do. So it was an amazing feeling. But I want to go, but after I wrote the book, I picked up a copy. Actually, I didn't know you could get it for free, April. I bought 3 copies on Amazon of Manuscript Magic. And I took them with me to Italy while I was over there in a dance studio. And I read them. And I thought, well, I can see where Heather's coming from because when she was working with me, she followed the logic that she had captured in Manuscript Magic. And when I write the next book about getting a heart transplant, it's going to be a lot easier because I'll have manuscript.
Well, okay. I had John freeze a little bit. Don't know if internet did that or not, but I was going to say, nobody's ever perfect the first time they do anything.
Right.
So you're moving, April, and John's not. I'm going to ask the next question to you. What can we say about modern technology? When you first started your business, what was the one thing that happened that you did not expect?
Oh, wow. Well, probably if there are any entrepreneurs listening to this show, they can relate to this, is that you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes you just have to dive in and do it and figure it out along the way. It's that being a resourcefully minded person, I think, is essential to entrepreneurship. For us, I would say the first 2 books that I did, I did them without a contract. So that was a major snafu for me because it was people I knew. And I thought, well, we're friends and I'll just help you out. One of them turned out exceptionally well, and the other one burned a bridge for the friendship that still has not been repaired. Luckily, I don't hold any resentment or forgiveness, but it was just like a moment of, wow, okay, I didn't realize that we weren't all on the same page here. So that was a lesson learned. And I think that from that point, then we built our contract and we've continued to revise the contract. We've continued to evolve our pricing. our services, our team. But getting over that first sort of emotional hurdle was kind of hard because you feel like, oh, my own naivete was the reason why I suffered in the beginning, but I didn't know that. So I think, as with anything, with writing a book or starting a company or whatever, you just have to start with the knowledge that you have and let that be enough, and just have that growth mindset of when challenges happen or I hit potholes or people show their true colors, I'm not going to take it personally. I'm going to do better next time, and I'm going to grow forward.
And don't beat yourself up too much over it. Heaven knows, we've all done these little oopses that we say, I wish I would have known, or I would have thought about it.
Of course. But you can't know what you don't know, and you can't wait until you think you know everything to start. Same goes for writing a book as it does for building a company. You just have to get in there and do it. Sort of like when John goes into his problem-solving mode and in a factory, like he can't know what the end result is going to be. Yeah. I mean, he knows he's going to solve the problem, of course. But how the problem is going to get solved, he can't have those pieces of knowledge until he actually goes.
Yeah, exactly. And every time you do something like that, you learn something a little bit more for the next time. John, what's one thing that you've learned from this first book that you're going to apply to the second one besides organizing it better?
Well, when April said in the beginning that people, I went in with a finished manuscript. Next time I won't do that. I will get in touch with April and her team after I get the outline on the whiteboard, and I'll start right from there. So I don't know why I waited around for 4 months, because I set myself up to be a bit disappointed. And I trust April and her team enough, and they know if I start the next book, I'll finish it. I'll just put together a few lines on the whiteboard, and that'll be the beginning.
But John, you're saying, you're just validating what April said. You don't know what you don't know. When you write, you think, okay, all I need to do is write a book. You don't realize all the stuff that goes behind it. Like a lot of first-time writers, they don't know all the things that go on behind the scenes. So, yes, that is our learning curve, isn't it?
Well, the technical pieces of this book and the people I've been working with over 30 years, I had it in my head that I knew everything I needed to write the book. But I needed to be responsible about it, and I needed to be technically correct. And many of your listeners can't tell, but right behind me, I have an entire library of books. And I started to write the book, and I thought, oh, brother, I have a lot more research to do to make sure that the points that I'm making are valid and are correct, because I don't have the freedom to make mistakes in the book. So there was a lot of research that had to be done as well. And I suppose the same thing's going to happen when I write the book about getting a heart transplant. It won't be as technically difficult, but it has to be responsible.
Well, I am going to throw on another song, which is called Autobiography, which I think is very appropriate. And, of course, we're going to be putting on a couple of commercials. Then we're going to wrap up this show. Once again, we're going to go into blackout mode, but we'll see you in about another couple of minutes.
I'm riding young and gifted in my autobiography. I figured who'd know better than me. I'm certainly the former, but I'm not so much the latter. But no one's gonna read it, so I'm sure it doesn't matter. When you find that you're the former, take pride in how you form. And when you find that you're the latter, don't let those people walk under you. I'm riding sharp and adult with my finger on the steam. Mirror in my bathroom, and I'm applying shaving cream, which would suggest that I'm the former. But how can I be the latter when something tells me it's the opposite? I'd rather. When you find that you're the former, for what you found. When you find that you're the lather, don't shave too high, you'll regret it later. This long, but still no one will tell me why. They figured who would know better than I. I know I'm a conformer, but I'm sure it doesn't matter. My new friends are all adults, and my old friends all have scattered. When you find you're a conformer, take pride and swallow whole. But if you're trying to climb the ladder, don't let people walk over you, because that's just what they'll do. Don't let people walk over you, because that's just what they'll do.
Enter my world. Join me, Harry Kukuli, in the Alien Temple every Saturday night, 10 o'clock to midnight on Spectrum on air. Immerse your senses in intense, passionate and seductive music. The Alien Temple with me, Harry Kukuli, every Saturday night, 10 to midnight on Spectrum on air.
Welcome back to the last 10 minutes of Extra Time with Rosemarie and our very special guest, John Allen, who has published his first novel, or his first book, not a novel, nonfiction. John, how can we get a hold of your book?
Well, thank you for asking. My book is called Simple Strategies, a model-based guide to solving complex problems, and it's available on Amazon. If you type in Simple Strategies by John Allen, it'll pop up, and you can see the reviews, and I'm sure it will attract you. And if you read it, what I would like to happen is for people to tell me where they live when they read the book. And I've asked people to do that on some of the platforms on that I belong to, and it's been pretty amazing that it's been sold literally around the world, and I'm quite pleased with that.
Wow. Hey, with April behind you, I'm not a bit surprised. April, tell us once again about your event.
Yes. So if you are in or around the Naples, Florida area, or you would like to escape winter or you're cold, I encourage you to come down, experience the beaches of Naples, and come see us Thursday, April 10th. We're going to be at the Norris Center in downtown Naples at 5 p.m. You can meet John in person, get a signed copy of his book, take a picture with him, shake his hand, all of those things, and see him speak on stage. And we have some tickets left. They're $50, and you'll have a great time networking with our team, our literary team, the community who supports books and authors, and just experiencing Naples is a great reason to come.
Now, you've got other speakers that are going to be there at the event at Naples. Who are some of the other speakers? Yeah,
we do. Cornell Bunting, he wrote a book called Escaping the Darkness. Christine Sadri wrote 13 Years Lost. Tracy Ann Moore Grant will be flying in. She wrote a book called Divorce Amicably, and that was a compilation book with 40 divorce professionals who all support amicable divorce. Mm-hmm. And lastly would be Lulu Carter, who wrote the Shiro Mindset, all about positive psychology and growing through trauma. And that's a really powerful book as well. So they can go to Booked Naples, BOOKED, Naples.com and read more about the event.
Is the event an all-day event, or is it a half a day? How long?
It's an evening. Yeah, it's an evening event. Starts at 5 p.m. Eastern. From 5 to 6 is networking, happy hour, meet and greet with the authors. The show will start at 6, runs for about 90 minutes. And then afterwards, we'll have more photos, opportunity for book signings, purchases. You know, it's so fun to be able to connect with an author in person. It's pretty rare. Most of us read books from authors we will never meet. Mm-hmm. And so it's great to be able to make that personal connection and get, you know, I always say purchase extra copies of books so that you can keep them in your closet and give them as gifts in the future. Like this year, make your gift of the year be signed copies of books.
Not too soon to start thinking about Christmas.
Right. Think about it now, you know, buy it, put it away, and then you know that you can go and pick from that stash and give someone an autographed copy of a book, which is really cool.
Now, you were mentioned a little bit earlier that you were recording these people. Will any of those speeches or any of the people that are your keynotes be on someplace like
they will all be? So we, on our O'Leary Publishing YouTube channel, we have a playlist called Booked Naples. You can see the former 3 years worth of these TEDx style talks from previous authors are up there right now. You're welcome to go check those out to kind of get a feel for the vibe of the event and see some great speakers. And then this year's speakers, once we get the videos done and edited, will be up on our YouTube channel as well.
I hate to say the time is almost running out. So you guys are being recorded. So what you say will be there forever.
John, will be used against us.
Show again. Would you come back on?
Of course I will.
There you go. April, you going to join us again sometime?
Absolutely. Happy to do it anytime, and especially from your home base in the UK.
Yeah. Hey, I'm coming to the States for 3 months. So hopefully I'm going to get down there and visit you guys.
Would love that. You've got a free ticket to Book Naples.
Between August and October.
And for anyone who's watching now who would like to come to Book Naples, if they would like to send me an email, april@o'learypublishing.com, I'd be happy to give you a code for a free ticket. All you have to do is get here.
Well, the interesting part about it is I do write fiction, but I am writing on a nonfiction called Hey, I'm Talking to You, and it's based upon my 30 years of working with young people in communication skills.
Hey.
April!
There you go. There you go. Sounds great. Sounds great.
We're going to be playing our very last song as we're leaving for the rest of the day. You guys, just in time for breakfast. I'm going to be going out for lunch. And it's by Dire Straits, and it's called Lady Writer, which I think is totally appropriate.
Expectation left to come up to, yeah. Lady writer on the TV. Yeah, she had